So I have up here on the screen two bathrooms. The one on the left-hand side is an ADA bathroom. I'll explain that in a second. And the one on the right are the bathrooms that we're going to draw, or some facsimile of what we're going to draw for our bathrooms on our mezzanine level. And the reason I'm showing you this slide is to kind of introduce you to the idea of ADA accessibility and the concepts there that apply with that. The ADA is the American Disabilities Act. It's a law enacted by the federal government to make sure that facilities that were built for the federal government and for other institutions and commercial projects conformed to accessibility standards to take into consideration people who might be physically impaired or vision impaired or hearing impaired. And that can include people in wheelchairs, people with walking impairments, as I've said, all kinds of just even aging. And so bathrooms are specifically places of attention, especially when we think about considerations for wheelchairs. So in this image on the left, we have what is considered the ADA turning radius of 60 inches for the idea that a wheelchair can pivot in that room without interfering or being obstructed with any of the fixtures that are within the bathroom. You'll also notice that with the toilet here, we're illustrating grab rails, which is a standard feature of an accessible bathroom. And then there's a whole host of clearances around these fixtures that are required. And so I'm just bringing this up now because one of the important considerations for us as designers is we want to make things that are interesting, visually interesting, cool spaces, but we also need to comply with this idea of codes and requirements, especially if we want to make places that are usable by everyone. And so in this case, we're going to make this curved wall, and it would be behoove us to anticipate this requirement for it meeting code. And so we can do some very simple things by putting that turning radius in and making sure we have ample clearances so that later on we may be just in the schematic phase or the early design development phases and have not laid out this bathroom completely to meet ADA requirements. But we know we have sufficient room to insert those components going forward. So let's go ahead with that in mind and think about constructing our bathrooms in our project. So I'll just shut this down and we'll take a look at, I'm on the mezzanine level of our project, and I'm between bays 6 and 7. You may obviously have different nomenclature or numbers. So it's one bay over. We're going to draw our bathroom right there, and I'll just zoom in on that area. And we'll start drawing our bathroom. So we're going to start with a wall, architectural, and I'm starting with a 6 1/8. That happens to be a relatively wider wall. It's wide because of its fire rating, but we're just going to use it to signify that we want a thicker wall there. And the idea with that center wall is to accommodate plumbing that would need to go through to drain the toilets and the sinks and ventilation and supply of water to those fixtures. And I'll start by drawing at the center of that beam, because that just gives me a quick way to find that center of that bay. And I'll come out and we'll make this, we'll just make this random for now, because I don't really, I've attached it to the beam, and I really want to pull it back and attach it to that wall. And let's say we want this thing to be, I'll say 8 foot and 6 inches. I want it to be 8 foot, but I'm going to actually just add 6 inches because that wall is 12 inches thick. And let me make sure I put a 6 in. All right, so we have now our center wall constructed. And let's go ahead and draw some side walls. And these are going to be normal sized walls. So I'm going to do a 5.5 inch partition wall. And we'll come over here and I'll just draw this 2 feet off of that center line. And I'll come back 6 feet. And we'll go ahead and we'll mirror that. And now we have a way of drawing that kind of curve that we wanted to generate. So I'm going to grab the wall tool again, and this time I'm going to use the arc tool, a start, an end point, and a radius. Come down here, grab the start, the end point, and then pull out a radius at the end of that. And for just kind of visual purposes, I'm going to just pull these a little bit proud, what I would call, just extending out a little bit like wings, just to kind of hide that corner condition, just make it look a little more interesting. And you'll see what I mean by that when we look at it in a 3D view. So now we've got our basic bathroom sized out. They look a little narrow to me. So we might just actually just grab all of these. Let me just select all of these. I'm going to hold down the control button. I apologize for not. I'm just going to grab these and move them out. We'll just come out another foot. All right, so there we go. And now let's think about placing some fixtures in there. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to go to Insert, and I'm going to go to Load Autodesk Family. This is the cloud source. I'll go back to all results. This is what it should look like to you. And we're going to scan down here until we come to plumbing. And we're going to look for the water closets, which is another term for toilets. And we're going to use a wall-hung toilet. The nice thing about a wall-hung toilet, it's easy to clean underneath it for maintenance, typically used in a commercial facility. And so they hang right on the wall. I'm going to select that, and I'm going to just leave that selected because I think I can multiple select. And then I'm going to go back to fixtures, and I'm going to grab a sink. And I'll just grab a 2D sink. It seems like these are set. These are indicating they look like they're set in a countertop. So I'm just going to grab this. Looks more like a bathroom sink. And then I'm going to go ahead and load that. And I'm actually not sure I've got both of those in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Architecture, Component, and Place Component just to see if both those came in. So we have the sink, and I don't have the toilet. So I was wrong about multiple selecting. So I'm going to go back to Insert. I'm going to go Load Family. Oops, sorry. I don't want to do it on the desktop. I want to do it in the cloud. And I'm in a modify mode. So what I've got to do is cancel out of that. Because the cloud wouldn't allow us to do that. I'm going to go back and load that up. And I got to go back to Fixtures and back to Water Closets and grab this one again and load it in also. Okay, so now we're ready to go. I'm going to go to Architecture, Component, Place a Component. And actually, well, I'm going to go ahead and place this component. I'm going to do it a little differently. I'm going to leave it at the 15-inch seat height. And I'm going to go ahead, and you'll notice that it won't indicate placing it until it touches a wall. And I'll come up close to the wall. And actually, this is usually a little closer than you might think because you want that grab rail to be really close to the toilet. And I don't know what the exact distance is right now, so I'm not going to worry about it. I'll come back when I go through and think about this, which we won't do in this project. But if it was a real project, I'd come back and analyze this room for ADA compliance. But I picked the outside wall this time because these walls are perpendicular, so it's much easier to attach the grab rails, makes it much more functional. The thing I left out was that idea of that turning radius. So I'm going to go to Model Line, that's under Architecture. And I'm going to grab the circle tool. And I don't know what happened there. Let me go back again. I'm going to grab Model tool, and there goes the circle. I'll grab a circle. A model line is something that will stay in 3 dimensions, so it's not like a drafting view where it just is laying there in 2D space. It's a 3D object. And I'll pull this out until it says 2'6", which will give us our 5-foot radius. And I'll just, it doesn't really matter where we place this. This is just a guide for us now to make sure that a wheelchair could turn in that space. And the next thing we need to do is place our sink. So I'm going to go to Component, Place a Component, and pull down until we can find our sink here. And there we go. And then once again, that has to touch the wall. So I'll go ahead and place that. And now we have our sink and our toilet. Like I said, we're not really concerned with making this a fully compliant ADA bathroom. I just want to make sure that we've sized it large enough to go back and do that. And now all we need really is a door to get into it. So I'm going to go to Door. And what's coming up for me right away is a 36 by 84 flush door. It's an interior door. Really not exactly what I would recommend for an interior, but it's of the right width. It needs to be 36 inches wide at a minimum. And so I'm going to grab that and insert it. And it just happens to be flipping in the right direction there. So I'm going to go ahead and place that. And then I'll just review if it's not facing in the right direction. We have all of these arrows available to us to get the correct orientation. But I'm having it open outwards because I think it's most easy to, once you're inside, not having to get the wheelchair out of the way of the door swing. And so I'm making sure I'm also coming in front of that beam. So now we've drawn our bathroom. Now we can just easily duplicate it. So I'm going to grab the items that I want to duplicate. And I'm going to grab the mirror tool. We can come find the center line of that wall, flip it over, and now we have our duplicate bathroom created. The one thing I didn't check was the height of our walls. They're unconnected to 13 feet, which is a little bit long, at least with the way I've left this file set. So I'm going to grab all of these, and I'm going to make sure that we set them to 10 feet. And I can't do all of them because they're different types, so I have to unselect one of them. Let's do this one first. I don't know why I'm not getting up. Oh, we need to leave the top unconnected. I'm really sorry. I should have thought about this before we drew all of these. Let's see if I can change them globally. Let's see if we can get the unconnected. And then I'm going to change these all to be 10 foot high. Because we'll put another drop ceiling in there below the actual ceiling that's up at the mezzanine level. So let's just take a look at what we've done. So I'm going to go to View, so you can get an idea of what we got here. I'm going to grab the camera. Just come back and take a peek at what we've got here. All right, so that's our curved wall for effect. You can see this little wing wall kind of hiding that idea of it just being a simple corner, creating a little shadow and visual interest. And then the other view that we could look at this is we can go to the section model. And let's go ahead and duplicate this section model so we can just kind of manipulate it a little bit. This may be used in another drawing, so I don't necessarily want to mess it up. So I'm going to go to Duplicate View, and I'm going to actually just rename it. I'll call it, let me move my big head out of the way. I'll call it Examine. With the idea that we can examine things that we're drawing. Looks like I have a random awning placed back here, so I'll go ahead and delete that. And then I'm going to turn on the hidden items with the little light bulb, and we'll pull down the crop box until we can see into that mezzanine level. And I'll turn that back off again. And then I'll just zoom in here so we can take a look at what our bathroom looks like. So we're not seeing our 2D objects until I let off of the mouse rotation. So this ghosted image of our sink and our turning radius, which is fine. So that really completes the kind of start at the look of creating bathrooms and interior spaces. And the next thing we'll look at is building some ceilings in this space, some kind of drop ceilings.